What is going on, everyone? My name is No Pun Intended, and welcome to my first Draft League video on the channel since early November. Hope it's worth the wait. Anyway, if you guys enjoy my Draft League content, please make sure to leave a like or comment on the video. I would very much appreciate it. But a lot of you are looking at the title right now and thinking, Week 6, where's 1 through 5? And I guess I have a bit of explaining to do. So the league I'm uploading these battles for is called the United Battle Championship. It's in its 6th season, and it's an upload required showdown league. Now, 3 of the coaches that were in the UBC at the start of the season had to drop out in between weeks 5 and 6 for personal reasons, and I was one of the guys that was asked to take over a team. Now, one of the reasons I decided to fill in for this league was because I knew a lot of the people that were in it. The commissioner, Adam, was a guy in MPL minors, and he's now in majors, and I power ranked for him. Ranked him number 1 overall the last time we did it. It's probably the reason why he was okay with letting me come in. And a bunch of the coaches that are in the UBC this season are guys that were in the UPA as well. Coaches like Ice, Omega, Andrew, Bronson, even though he's technically not in the UPA this season, but we'll throw him in there anyway. And one of the other funny things is that the other 2 interim coaches, Ben and Bill, are also UPA guys. So very quickly, the UPA is becoming the UBC's farm league. But anyway, let's talk about the team that I inherited. And I don't mean to say this next part like I think it's a bad team, because I think there's definitely some good mods here, but it seems like the person who drafted it just said, hey, this mod gets Swords Dance, let's put it on the team. Oh look, this other mod gets Swords Dance, I want it too. And as a person whose team mascot is an Aegislash, I can appreciate that on one level, but on the other hand, I like a little more variety in my mons. But I wouldn't have taken over this squad if I didn't think there were some intriguing mons that I wanted to try out for the first time. In this case, I'm talking about Kartana, Mimikyu, Snorlax, Gliscor, and, well, that's pretty much it, actually. Honestly, the team I took over has quite a few flaws, like how Kartana is the fastest mon at base 109 speed, or how there's a frightening lack of special attackers beyond Keldeo, Moltres, and Vileplume, or how there's almost no support mons whatsoever. But hey, at least if I do lose games with this team, I can blame the roster and not myself. God, I'm good at this. But speaking of good at this, there's one coach from the UBC UPA pipeline that I specifically didn't mention, and that's because he is my Week 6 opponent. Yeah, we're taking on Brendan and his Boston Braviaries. He's well known on this channel for being the guy that knocked me out of UPA playoffs last season, so I guess it's only fitting that for my first game back on YouTube, we're going to be taking him on again. So we've got revenge on our minds, but I'm using a team that I am not comfortable with whatsoever. The thing is though, even though this is a team I'm not very comfortable with, this matchup I kind of felt a little bit confident in. Like, I felt like my mons matched up very well against his team. Especially Keldeo and Snorlax. Granted, I've never used either of those mons before, but I felt I could make something that could utilize their strengths and have a good matchup against any of the 6 mons you potentially choose to bring. So, enough rambling on my end, let's just get into the team that I decided to bring. But let it be known that if these weren't mandated by the UBC, I would not be doing team builders, because I just find that they're not very fun for me. First up, we have Scarf Kartana, and my feeling behind this was that I felt like Brendan was almost guaranteed to bring a Rabombi with sticky webs. So in order to prevent Kart from being sacked to any special attacker, I felt like I needed it to outspeed any potential mons he could bring in that relative speed tier. Namely, I needed the Scarf to outspeed Hoopa and Salamence under the sticky webs. We have Calm Mind Keldeo, who, if it gets to +1 special attack, one of these attacks can OHKO pretty much everything on his team. Like, Hoopa supposedly dies to +1 Sacred Sword, Salamence dies to +1 Hidden Power Ice. I just felt like it would work in that sense. But it's not the main win condition, and if he gets up webs, then Keldeo immediately loses the speed that it needs to do that. It's holding Payapa Berry specifically to take a hit from Hoopa unbound, so it can get off the +1 Secret Sword. We also have Specially Defensive, Hazard Controlling Gliscor. I felt like Spadef would help me out in matchups against mons like Celebi. We have Assault Vest Drapion. I'm specifically going without Earthquake, even though he does have a Heatran on his team, because I don't anticipate switching Heatran into Drapion, expecting the EQ. Pursuit is namely to trap stuff like Hoopa and the Celebi. Bug Bite is for Hoopa and Celebi as well. I really want this thing to switch into Hoopa and Celebi if you couldn't figure it out. I'm going to skip to Rotom Frost next, because this one is basically my way to get rid of sticky webs. So maybe I didn't need to take all those precautions with Kartana, but was kind of a rush job team because I really didn't know what kind of squad I wanted, and I'm really not used to playing with any of these mons. But the basic idea is that Blizzard hits Salamence, Hidden Power Ground is for the Heatran, and Volt Switch gets momentum on anything that's not named Donphan or Gastrodon. And considering that my team generally does have a good matchup against ground types, I didn't really expect him to bring either one of them. He could potentially bring one, but definitely not both. And that means that Rona Frost is going to be relatively free to pivot around. But the piece de resistance of the team was my Snorlax set, and I was pretty proud that I figured that the set could really put in the work against Brendan's team. It's a mono-attacking Rest Hawk set with Frustration. One of the first things I noticed about Brendan's 10 Mons is that he doesn't have a Ghost type, and his 2 Steel types are both special attackers, and they don't really have setup at all, so they can't break past Snorlax, even though Snorlax needs to set up to +6 in order to 2-hit KO them. So I felt like there were plenty of Mons that I could set up curses on with my Snorlax, and then I could just Frustration him to death. I didn't even need to worry about Sticky Webs for this strategy to work, so this was going to be my win condition 99% of the time. And you know, because I'm really hammering in the fact that Snorlax is going to be good, that something's going to happen with it. So let's get to the game, and these 6 Mons that Brendan brought, I kind of expected. I didn't think he would bring any of his ground types. I knew Rabombi was coming, I knew Hoopa was coming because it's his top pick. But the good news is that because he didn't bring his Gastrodon or his Donphan, I feel like Rotom Frost is just an all-around solid lead, because I can Volt Switch out on whatever he goes into. And I'm anticipating the Rabombi lead, which does happen. So that's cool. So I can just click Volt Switch, I'll get damage off on something, and I'm going to pivot out into my specially defensive Gliscor. I think I can take it rather easily. But this damage reveals that he is actually a Specs Rabombi. And because I don't have great Fairy Switchins on my team since I traded away Doublade, I'm kind of in an awkward position, where I kind of have to bring my Rotom Frost in onto Rabombi and take almost 75%. The good news, however, is that I can just click Volt Switch again, and either he stays in with Rabombi and lets it die, or he has to switch out into something to take the Volt Switch, and I get momentum. Now he's going to pick the latter and go into his Heatran, and because of that I can pivot into my Keldeo, and now I either threaten a Water type attack or a Fighting type attack, neither of which the Heatran wants to stay in on. This is when I try to think, what would I do if I were in Brendan's position? And in my mind at the time, I thought he would just choose to sack Rabombi, knowing that it could take a Fighting type attack if I went for it, and Fighting is the most optimal play. So, trying to make a bit of an over-prediction, I just go for the Hydro Pump, even though it doesn't hit most of his team, because I thought that's what he would expect. But instead he just chooses to go into the Celebi. And I don't even get any damage off on it, because my Hydro Pump misses. I made that play under the assumption that he knew that I would be a Choice Scarf Kartana, but it wasn't obvious for my team construction at any point, so he would presumably think that he could keep Rabombi around to deal a bunch of damage to Kartana anyway. And the only thing that expressly walled the Rabombi was my Drapion, which again he didn't know was Assault Vest yet at this point, so I don't know what the heck I was thinking in that regard. And that's not the only misread I made in preparation for this match. I also decided for some reason not to put Hidden Power Bug on my Keldeo. Now, back in 5th gen, Keldeo would run HP Bug as a way to deal with Celebi specifically. The reason I didn't put it on there was because I felt as though the extra power of Hidden Power Ice as opposed to Icy Wind would help me out in the Salamence matchup, and also I didn't want to miss. But in hindsight, I really should have gone the other way. I know Brendan as a player is someone who doesn't necessarily read the hidden powers that well, at least from my games against him before. I know some coaches will scout really conservatively in order to do that, but Brendan historically from the games I've seen him play hasn't done that. So I really just should have stuck Hidden Power Bug on there in order to kill off Celebi. It was a pretty bad decision on my end, knowing the kind of player I'm going against. And knowing that it was very unlikely that he would go with Tangaberry on Celebi, even though I have a lot of bug coverage on my team. So unfortunately I have to swap out again, and I decide in the moment that the Mon I want to go into is my Gliscor, because I'm anticipating the Celebi to be a more defensive set with the Tangaberry at this point to potentially stomach a Hidden Power Bug, and I figured that whatever move that Celebi is going to go for, my Gliscor can tank it, and then presumably if he's no speed, I can outrun it, go for Roost, and just get my health back, which is still a bad idea, because if I Roost, then I'm weak to Grass moves, so I don't know what the heck happened there. But I actually do make a kind of good read here and going into Gliscor, because he predicts Drapion instead and goes for the Earth Power, so I avoid having to take damage on one of my biggest threats to his team. So that's at least good. And now that my Gliscor is at 60%, I know that if he's choice locked into it, whether he's Specs or Scarf, that he can't touch my Gliscor. And if he doesn't have a boosting item, then he's not going to be able to kill my Gliscor before I go for the Roost. So I'm confident that no matter what, Gliscor can survive at least one attack. I can gauge the damage and see what kind of set he is. Or if he's choice locked, I can go for Roost and get back all my HP on the switch. However, things don't go according to plan, because he's going to go for the Leaf Storm, revealing he's not choiced, and he's just going to straight up kill me. I'm sitting there at my computer, completely dumbfounded as to how Gliscor could have potentially died to this Celebi. So I pull up the calc, I enter my Gliscor spread, I enter in any possible spread of Celebi, as it turns out, not only does he need to be offensive in order to kill me with Leaf Storm, but he also has to have some kind of a boosting item, presumably Meadow Plate or Miracle Seed or something like that. Either way, that means he's not Tango Berry. So if I just had Hidden Power Bug on Keldeo the whole time, I would have been able to take him out. But I can't let that completely discourage me. I still have a chance to win this game as long as my Keldeo and my Snorlax are still here, so I'm just going to try to whittle down everything else he has as quickly as I can. So with that in mind, I'm going to go into my Drapion, and rather than click Pursuit, I'm going to instead go for the knockoff, trying to take off an item on a potential switch-in, and just open the door for either Keldeo or Snorlax. And because of that, I'm able to remove the leftovers from his Salmon switch-in, which means it's probably a defensive set. So with that in mind, not only does this mean that he can't recover HP if I set up on him with my Snorlax, but that it's now in range for Keldeo to kill it with Hidden Power Ice. So trying to make an aggressive play, I'm just going to go hard into Keldeo as he brings in the Hoopa Unbound, but knowing that I'm Payapa Berry, I figure I can live a single attack anyway, so what I'm going to do is just go for the Calm Mind, thinking that if I do that, it'll put the Hoopa within range of a +1 Sacred Sword. But on the same turn, he's going to click his Z move, which turns out to be Fightinium Z, and I'm like, oh please, dear God, Keldeo live. As it turns out, Keldeo is able to tank the attack on 4%, which just goes to show how important that HP investment I had in it was. But I need the Hoopa out of the way in order to facilitate a potential Snorlax sweep in the endgame. So what I'm going to do is just click Secret Sword. It does 85%, and while Keldeo does die, I decided at this point that Snorlax was going to be the way I win this game. And now, a lesson in what not to do when you have a Mon sitting there at 15% waiting to be revenge killed. Instead of going into Drapion and just trying to Pursuit Trap the Hoopa to facilitate Snorlax's sweep, instead I go into Kartana getting greedy and trying to get a Beast Boost. The only problem with that strategy is that he still has his Salamence, and no matter what move I go for, Salamence isn't going to take 50% from it, and because I know it's defensive, it probably has Roost, so yeah, definitely an awful play on my end. And this just goes to show how specific a situation you need to justify Scarf Kartana, because it really is a niche set if you're locked into a move and you can't reliably gain Beast Boosts. As a result, I have to stack up my Rotom Frost, which is also going to create a bit of a funky situation in the end. Because right now, I'm down to 3 Mons, and I decided that going into Kartana here is a good idea, even though I've seen it's a defensive Salamence. My best move to hit this thing with is Smart Strike, and he just goes into the Celebi anyway, but if he had stayed in with Mence, he wouldn't have died. He could have just roosted, and well, I'm just going to skip ahead of it here just because this part's really annoying. Basically, he's going to realize that my Drapion and my Kartana are hard-walled by his Salamence, so he can just freely go for Dragon Dances here without having to worry about dying. And I realized in that moment that, oh crap, the only Mon I have that can potentially kill the Mence is my Snorlax. But it's also my win condition, so right here is when I realize I have to switch into it right now on a turn where he goes for Roost. So I get off some damage with Cart, I go into Lax, he does Roost, and now I'm going to try to set up my curses. As it turns out, the first Dragon Claw does only 52%. So if I get off a single curse, that damage will reduce to about 36%, and because of leftovers, he's not going to be able to 3-hit KO me, which means that I can attempt to infinitely Rest Talk and try to set up curses to the point where he can't kill me. If I get lucky with Sleep Talk rolls, then presumably I'll have a chance to take out the Mence. But at the same time, another thought came in my head. What if he expects me to be a Rest Talk set, and he instead decides to switch out into something that can kill me immediately? And that's when I start to panic. In my mind, there's no way he's going to go for Dragon Claw on this turn because he has to expect me to be a Rest Talk set, even though I have not once revealed Rest or Sleep Talk to this point. So with that in mind, and knowing that if I click Curse and he clicks Dragon Claw twice, he just knocks me out, I decide in the face of the obvious play, I'm going to click Curse, and it's going to be amazing.
The following is a public service announcement from the United Battle Championship. To the loyal fans of the UBC, we apologize on behalf of new coach No Pun Intended for his reckless style of play. This particular maneuver in his Week 6 game versus Boston was a completely stupid decision with no upside whatsoever. His curse play proved to be incredibly dangerous to his Pokemon and to the integrity of our great league. No coach should ever assume their opponent is going to completely forget how the sport of Pokemon battling works and risk their Pokemon's health and safety in the process. We expect all of our employees to have compassion and respect for each other in order to avoid situations like these. As a result of this terribly short-sighted action that no noble battler would ever consider during a match, from this point forward we will diligently monitor our coaches during games to make sure they don't completely embarrass themselves while playing. Please, if you ever play a single game of competitive Pokemon, have empathy for your team, understand their limitations and potential, and don't ignore the numbers. Your Pokemon are important, and they deserve the opportunity to live a long and prosperous life. Thank you, and have a nice day.